Hello, Global Theater. My name is Jerry Fielka. Today's January 28th, 2024. We want to thank Rob Grant and his amazing podcast, I'm Probably Wrong About Everything. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here with Ben Miller. Ben, where in the heck you calling in from?
I'm calling in from Ypsilanti, Michigan, United States, planet Earth.
Ipsitucky.
That's what they used to say. It's really changed since they made that term up. Yeah.
The first question, Ben, is what is the best thing for a human being?
Best thing, well, my immediate thought would be, as I think Lawrence said, to love and be loved, to support it with, yeah. Mm-hmm.
A beautiful line. You know, Eden Abe wrote that for the song Nature Boy. He was homeless in Venice. So I always tell people who are trying to kick homeless people off the boardwalk, you better be careful. You might be kicking off a songwriter who's going to write the greatest love song ever.
Yeah, you got to be careful.
What's your favorite form of information, how it comes into you?
Oh, gosh, that's such a broad question. And my immediate thought is how corporate government has taken over mass media and has distorted reality for many, and that we need to find our own ways to research independent media to find the truth. But that's in regards to the world as it is standing now, which is pretty scary. As far as information, well, I do things intuitively. I've always been a very intuitive-based artist, musician, whatever. That's what's always been important to me, instead of reading a book or being told the how-tos,
Yeah, that's good. Intuition is an amazing thing. And I think you and your brothers all have it, being the great musicians you are. Why do you think humans collect or gather information?
I think human beings are inherently trying to elevate or at least most of them, are trying to elevate themselves by learning. That's why education is part of our reality. To expand, develop, research, discover, to become something other than what we came into this world as. I think that's pretty key, and that would be why we are trying to find information about whatever it is that we're walking towards.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Do thoughts create emotions?
Oh, yeah. It's taken me years to realize how my thoughts have created my own reality emotionally. Yeah, especially anger, angry thoughts. You are what you think.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of a blanket statement, like you are what you eat, but I think it's important to consider.
It's funny because there's a bumper sticker on a car on my street and it says, "Don't believe everything you think."
Yeah, that's good too. Yeah.
Or as Frank Zappa says, you don't want to see what's behind my eyes.
I just listened to Lawrence gave me a burn of "We're Only in It for the Money."
Oh my God.
That is an impeccable album, man. It's beyond his original doo-wop mockery, and now he's using 20th century electronic music, Edgar Varese influences, and just bizarre. Yeah, it's good.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
You kind of wonder, where did Frank come from? But you know who I got into? Have you gotten into Hermeto Pascal?
There's a beautiful song. I believe it's the composer you're talking about. He Miles Davis on Live Evil did a
Oh
song.
yeah, that's it. That's how most
Little
of us
church.
know. But watch Hermeto. He's the Frank Zappa Brazil. Dude, there's a thing I just saw today. He lays down, it's called The Mysterious Corpse. He's got a big old fat belly, and he plays his body in his mouth. He's singing. I mean, it is like he plays a flute in a river and goes under the river. He brought a pig in at one recording session and squeezed it as a percussive. It's, usually the conga player rubs his hand across. Anyways, we'll go off on a million tangents. Let's stay. Fill in the blank. This is fun, Ben. Thanks. Fill in the blank. I don't know what I think until I.
I don't know how to answer that one.
That's fine. Can humans think without language?
That's a good question. I'm sure they can.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm positive they can, because we're very thinking. We're intelligent creatures, regardless. I think we all have language, whether it's an established language or not. We have some way to communicate. Communication is how we move around. Yeah.
Yeah. Because Chomsky says the language is not just words. It's a culture, a tradition, a unification of community, a whole history that creates what a community is. What do you do when language doesn't work? When language breaks down, what do you do?
Well, it breaks down quite often. So, the first response is frustration. Communication breakdown is difficult, especially when you're talking about a subject you really feel strongly about. But there's so many other ways to communicate besides language, obviously. Just your eyes, the way you look at someone.
Yep.
Anything, gestures, body language.
Yep.
The gist. Yeah.
That's good. Gaze is a heavy word. I like that. Your observations of humans in general, are we more thinking beings or more feeling beings?
I've heard that being human is special in that we are emotional beings, and that not all, many creatures aren't, well, they're emotional, but many mammals don't laugh, for example, or cry, but they certainly feel those emotions. But we have developed emotions compared to many creatures on this planet, at least in that regard of expressing. I don't know how much more developed we are actually from anything else on this planet, but
yeah.
Say that question again.
But it's interesting what you said. It's a stupid question. Are we more feeling or more thinking beings?
Oh.
And we invented the word so we think we can separate it. Probably we're equally. But it's funny, what you said was one thing I wanted to observe is we don't know how to speak dog language. So they might not cry or they might not laugh, but they might do something that we think as humans, oh, they're crying or they're laughing. So we don't know their language, but we put our language on theirs,
Yeah, projecting our perception on other beings. Yeah. No, it's not really a stupid question. It's actually pretty pertinent. But it's hard to, like you say, we don't really think and feel in two different compartments. It's an integrated scenario.
It's like this. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's like all my questions. Is it more this or more that? Well, it's both, and it depends, but it's just, you don't have to answer the questions. Basically, they're just prompts to get us to talk about something. So these are two questions from Alan Turing, 1950s. One, is thinking a function of the soul?
I'm not sure, because thinking is processing, and certainly when we pass on, I believe there's life after death. And before we got here, certainly we were processing and interpreting wherever we were or will go. And so the thinking is kind of more of a brain thing, a term as a use of the brain.
Yeah.
But I've had what's called out-of-body experiences where they're not lucid dreams. Okay, let's keep that straight. It's not lucid dreaming. It's where you're fully conscious and you're not dreaming. You are, I'm often in my bedroom, either separating from my body or communicating with somebody in the room, real normal things. That's not a dream. My bedroom is not a dream. And so I'm certainly, and those experiences that I've had off and on, very few, but very intensely real experiences that I've had ever since I was a teenager or before. That's when I was a teenager, I'd be coming up in the late 60s with, topics of Eastern philosophy, reincarnation, dream study, psychic research. What's his name? Who's that famous guy that we could see back in the past and the future, probably?
You mean either William James, Edward Casey,
Casey.
Edward Casey, yeah.
I was real interested in that when I was 10, 11, 12. I thought that was really fascinating. But, as a teenager, I began to understand what that was better. Yeah. And clearly, when I'm in that state, I'm just like I am right now talking to you. I'm thinking. I'm give me a break.
I give you a break. I mean, I believe you. I believe that. It's amazing. I like that. I love how you distinguish out of body. It's not lucid dreaming. That's really important. The second Turing question is, can machines think?
God, I hope not. The whole AI thing is really scary to me. And I don't know if I really want to talk about it because it's coming in really strong, obviously. Yeah. It's kind of miraculous, certain things that are now being taken for granted. Internet, for example, and all that entails. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. Shit, I don't know.
No, it's one thing I heard that I like about AI is someone said AI is in its infant stage and it's our job to raise it well, so it's not going to go away. And we have the ability with any human invention kind of to direct how it's going to be used.
I don't believe that. It's in the hands of the corporate government. Yeah. It's not in our hands.
Yeah.
So there's the end of that story.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's in its infancy. I think it's been around, since mid last century or whatever. Yeah. It's been around, and it's a lot more powerful than they let on. A lot more is going on, like many of the things that are going on behind the curtain.
Behind the curtain, exactly.
A lot more developed. And I don't want to sound like a paranoid, but no, unfortunately. I mean, I will agree with you that it can be a wonderful thing, and yeah, it is what we do with it, generally speaking.
Yeah. Do you more pursue happiness or more pursue meaning?
Meaning.
Yeah.
Happiness is fleeting.
Yeah.
It's joy that I try to gravitate towards, and that's something that is long lasting. It's more of a belief systems or a foundation of reality that, happiness is in terms of that term.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's good because that's what I'm after. It's me and you versus the wording on the questions. And I like when people change the word happiness to more joy. That's what they pursue, joy. And meaning is exactly what Viktor Frankl, where I got the question from, he says meaning tends to last and happiness doesn't.
Yeah.
So, Ben, does the brain more detect consciousness or create it? Like, is consciousness there bubbling away and we're more so detecting it or more so creating it?
I think we are consciousness.
Yeah.
So I don't think we're creating it per se or detecting it. We're swimming in it because we are that. It's possible that we're part of a, what they call universal consciousness or whatever. So we're all all is one. We're all part of whatever that mass is. But when I think of consciousness and what consciousness is, it just is.
Yeah.
It's something we are. Yeah.
I like that. What's faster, speed of light or speed of thought?
Speed of thought.
That's the right answer, even though there's no right or wrong answers. You did it, dude.
I don't know if I'm making these answers too quick or what, but
No, you're doing great. It's fun. Audre Lorde, the poet, said, "You can't dismantle the master's house using the master's tools." Yvonne Rainer responded and said, "You can if you expose the tools." What new tool do you suggest?
Yeah, I'm trying hard. I'm sorry, I'm trying hard to follow that.
Basically, the question, Ben, is what tool do you gravitate towards? You can add the word new if you want, and you can apply she's a poet. So she's saying you can't dismantle the master's house using the master's tools. You can apply the quote if you want, but you don't have to. Again, you put it in the context you want. So it's basically, what tool do you gravitate towards?
To do what?
You put in the context you want to do whatever you want. Yeah,
Yeah. Well, generally, I mean, what that kind of but that question, whatever it is that I think you're saying, or the poet or whoever, just my response is automatically not to follow rules, not to really follow rules.
Yeah.
To make up your own, to find your own path.
Good.
And again, that goes back to intuition and experience. The only way you really can, as we talked about earlier, as human beings, we're elevating and trying to educate ourselves in whatever means that we do. Oh God, I lost my train of thought.
No, you nailed it, Ben, in so many ways, because George Carlin says the role of the comedian is to draw the line and then cross it. So it's not to follow the rules, but the best is Tony Conrad, the guy who helped start, him. He said artists make rules that haven't been made. Artists break rules that haven't been made yet.
Yeah, that's nice. Yeah,
I love that one.
Yeah, George Carlin's great.
He is great indeed.
Yeah, no, I think I was going to go back to the same thing with intuition and going with your gut. There's so much as a kid, especially as a teenager, of course, as many of us do, dismiss authority and break rules and try to figure out our own ways of going about it, and that's so important. I think
very important.
Especially if you can manage that as a young age instead of waiting till you're 20 or 30 or 40.
Yep. And I think being raised in Michigan like we were, especially close to a cool town like Ann Arbor, it was in the air. They were always fucking with everything, and like, okay. So what new toy do you suggest?
Well, I just, when I play what I call multiphonic guitar, it's, the guitar has different pickups on different parts of the body, and it's set on a keyboard stand.
Yeah.
It's going through two speakers, so you can say it's stereophonic, but the 4 different pickups on the guitar are routed in various ways such that it's more than stereophonic. That's why I say multiphonic. Oh shit.
Well, no, let's just say that because I want to get into music soon. And I really wanted to talk to you about your multiphonic
Well,
guitars.
I just forgot what the hell question you asked.
Well, it was what new toy do you
Oh,
suggest?
I
So
was, and with this instrument, I use up to 12, 15 effects, which pedals, which isn't
yeah,
rare for people in the so-called noise genre. But um, I just bought a device that's really crappy that I had about 15 years ago, and I got rid of it after a year, just because the technology, it's just shitty digital technology. But
yeah.
what it does is totally weird. And no other pedal does certain things, and I really miss it. I really miss some of the recordings I was listening to back then. I was doing things that because of this pedal. And so, went back online, bought another one. Now they're like twice as expensive for a used pedal versus what they were. They were so cheap. It was like $40 a pedal. But anyway, yeah, that would be my toy suggestion is don't, instead of trying to find the most fabulous this and that, go with whatever has the creative means to do something different, I guess.
What is the pedal called?
It's a Behringer. And Behringers make both really crappy electronics and very high end, as I understand. And these are really crappy guitar pedals. It's called an ultra pitch shifter harmonizer, I believe, and it's stereo. Which most of my pedals are stereo because of the guitar I use.
Yeah. Well, let's just skip a lot of these and go right into music now because I was just loving what you called your thing, multiphonic guitarscape, because in 72 we saw Robert Fripp do Frippatronics on Midnight Special.
Really?
You're like, holy fuck. I saw Mike Kelly do the same thing in Angel Hall for a Diane Kirkpatrick art class we were in, art history class.
Wow.
And he just did Psychobabble through 2 reel-to-reel tape machines. Now everybody and their mother does digital delay, and it's like, do you know the roots? And so to prepare today, I says, well, I better look up what year Frippatronics started. And it was 72. I go, that's interesting. And then the article said, and Fripp and Eno got it from Terry Riley and Pauline Oliveros.
Yes.
Yeah. And I wanted to know from you, who did you learn? Well, what would we call it? Analog digital delay, or who did you learn? Where did you get Frippatronics from? I mean, is that what you're doing with your?
No, I have nothing to do with Frippatronics, but I understand your, connection there. When No Pussyfooting came out, Brian Eno, and a wonderful record, and I grew to like it, but I was first upset with it because it was like, this is Terry Riley. When
you knew right off the bat.
Right off the bat, I said, this is ripping Terry Riley.
Yeah.
And it was obviously different, but it was obviously, and they admit it, Brian Eno admits that.
They admit it. Exactly. Yeah.
So, I mean, I have a lot of influences, Terry Riley, Brian Eno, not so much Fripp, but, although I appreciate a lot of what he's done. Fred Frith turned me on to his album. I think it's a solo album that came out in 74 that featured a stereo guitar where he had a pickup on the nut. The actual nut of the guitar was
really?
So when he was hammering, you get 2 signals coming on when he's hammering on the strings. So that's kind of what spurred me into experimenting, which is what I did in 82, almost 10 years later.
You started in 82. Did you hear Derek Bailey before Fred Frith or after? Or same time?
About the same time, a little before. I was in Boston going to having a miserable experience with music school, and I was turned on to Derek Bailey then in 73.
73, yeah.
I was coming out of the psychedelic rock, art rock scenario, which I had adored for so long, and was getting into jazz. And I discovered Derek Bailey, and so I could let go of the Sid Barrett thing that was already dead because he was long gone.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, who am I going to connect with as a mentor? And I said, oh, Derek Bailey. So Derek Bailey influenced me quite a bit, and what I've heard of Fred Frith is wonderful, but I never really followed him per se. I have a thing against following musicians and fully connecting with. I'd rather just be in my own thing and try to find my own.
Yep, that's important. I try to turn kids on. I go, you got to hear Hermeto Pascal and Astor Piazzolla and the Shags, and then I go, whatever I told you, delete it. Just do your own thing. But
there are definite masters, like that piece "Little Church" on Live Evil by.
Oh God,
it's just so beautiful. I got to show you. I had a saxophone orchestra in New York, 12 saxophones. And we did a cover of that, so I'll have to send that to you. It's really beautiful.
Oh my God, that album is my lifeblood. And I don't want to hear the 6-hour DVD of all the outtakes. And one day I hit the wrong button on YouTube, and I go, wait a minute, and it was going off because I know like every pulse and breath in that album. Live Evil is like my lifeblood. It is like. Oh my God. It's just like mind blowing. And to think Michael Henderson is Stevie Wonder's bass player, and Miles goes, dude, I want you to play for me. He goes, I'm an R&B soul player. He goes, that's what I want. So this was great because you love it. Me and Andre, when we started Black Shoe Polish, I said, we should rename our band. Where would we be without Michael Henderson? Because it's like this, boom, boom. It's just like pulse.
He's impeccable. He is.
Oh my God. And you'll freak this out. The third in line for Motown bass players, James Jamerson, Michael Henderson, and then David Waller. He was homeless in the parking lot where I hang out in Venice for 5 years. He died in the parking lot, but he was the coolest dude playing bass on the boardwalk in Venice for years.
I'm not familiar with his work or what he was
doing.
He
played with Eddie Kendrick. He played with the Motown guys, but he was the third in line. And it's amazing to anyways, he has amazing Hendrix stories from the Apollo. But let's go right into music, Ben. This is really fun. What's the function of music?
Well, unfortunately, in this country, it's entertainment. What little experience I've had in Europe, touring and performing with other artists, where it's part of their culture.
Yeah.
And I know their funding is getting all messed up now, as it is everywhere. But it was just like, I don't know, and this I may be wrong, but it's you could be a doctor, you could be a musician, doesn't matter. You'd be okay, but not here, not in this.
Yeah.
No, excuse me. So that's my immediate response is, hello. Yeah. But it's obviously it's a cultural purpose. It's the arts.
Well, Cage said a funny thing about it, and I'm curious your response. He says the function of music he learned from his Zen teacher was to soothe the soul and make it susceptible for divine intervention. What do you think of that?
I don't think that's necessarily why it's there.
Yeah,
I mean, it certainly can be, and call me ignorant, but there's lots of reasons for music.
Right. But screenwriting teacher in Ann Arbor told me great art is when you can clearly see the intention of the maker. Kubrick says the opposite. Great art is when you can clearly not see the intention of the maker. When you're writing your own piece of music, a Ben composition, what role does intention play in your creative process?
It's well, it's very strong. It's it's very specific. In terms of composition, I came up with my own method. I'm not going to explain it because it's going to be kind of tedious, but it's similar to 12 tone, only instead of using pitches, it's intervals. So
Yeah.
it has interval hierarchy versus pitch hierarchy is the way I try to explain it. But we're dealing with sequences of intervals, and it's not that simple, and it's not that cerebral and without emotion. What I do, and everything I do is actually fairly emotional. I consider it's emotive. The work I do, although very cerebral, it's also very emotive. And I feel very strongly. So I guess the intention is very important.
Well, Duchamp said there's no art without an audience. How much are you thinking of your listener when you're writing your piece of music?
Not a whole lot. First of all, I'm not sure who my audience is. I mean, I have a better idea now, but than I did, say, 30 years ago. I don't know. That kind of baffles me because although the audience is very important, those who will listen. I mean, that's why I do what I do, for people to listen and take it in and process it. But I do it because I want to do it, because these are ideas I have, and I think they're worthwhile. And I hope that people will think of it similar as I do, I guess.
Well, McLuhan says everything we invent extends some humanness or human sensorium, like knife and fork extends our teeth. The shutter in a camera extends our eyelid. Even non-tangible, say religion or philosophy, might extend consciousness. Mm-hmm. What does the guitar extend for you? What humanness?
Boy, I really like the way you set up that question. Yeah, I mean, when I think about playing the saxophone, because I also play saxophone, it's an extension of my body, and I suppose guitar is an extension of my body, which is an extension. And what I do with it, obviously, is my mind telling my body what to do. But I don't know how to really give much of an answer to that.
No, well, the extension of my body is the answer. That's fine.
Yeah.
So Copeland says the 4 ingredients of music are melody, harmony, rhythm, and tone color. In non-academic music terminology, what's tone color? Like, to the normal person on the street, how would you describe what is tone color?
I'm not sure. Maybe frequencies.
Yeah. And how do you integrate those 4, Ben? Is there a process? Is there some focus of the 4, or is there some process where you integrate melody, harmony, rhythm, and tone color?
Melody and harmony are things I mean, I work with melody and harmony, but some stuff I do doesn't really have either. And yet it has a feeling of harmony, even if it's dissonant harmony. And it may evolve slowly rather than specific chords moving here, every 4 bars. It may be just a very slow movement. Melody, again, sometimes melody can just be implied. But it's funny, I mean, melody is like linear and harmony is horizontal. So there is that kind of reality that is part of sort of a construct of what we interpret as music.
You want to suss that out a little. You said melody is linear and harmony is horizontal. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Can you suss that out? What does that mean?
Well, melody is one at a time, roughly. So you're going, and chords or harmony is a cluster of pitches, which is moving. Um, it, it's it's two-dimensional rather than one-dimensional. If that makes sense.
That makes sense. That was good. But now, what does rhythm and tone color do? You have an interesting approach. I mean, most people just go, "Why you do all four all the time at once," or they just go, "I'm a melody person," or But it is. There's all four working, but there is, as you said, well, melody and harmony are not so much. They're there, but they're not, say dominant or whatever, however you wanted to word it. But you have a feeling for them.
Yeah.
But then you didn't say, you now talk about rhythm and tone color. How is that integrated in? What does that have to do for you when you're composing?
Well, tone color perhaps is more, I think of it more in terms of harmony. But and rhythm really changes things. I mean, if you don't have any rhythm, a lot of what I do doesn't have specific rhythm, and it it doesn't have specific rhythm, so it has kind of a pulse on its own. But if you throw a specific rhythm down, it changes everything. It propels it in a certain way, depending on what you're doing with the rhythm, whether it's a drum kit or percussion or a pulsing bass that's more rhythmic than, say, some other instrument. It really changes things. I really get off on polyrhythms, different rhythms happening, because it's more dimensional. There's more dimension to it.
Yeah.
But it's not, you go that route and you dismiss entertainment and you dismiss what most people want to listen to.
Yeah. This is the great, my friend has the greatest rock and roll radio show in the world, Music for Nimrods, Reverend Dan. You got to hear it. And 2 nights ago, it's from 3 a.m. till 6 a.m. Every Saturday morning I get up and listen to it.
Wow.
Because I'm a radio guy. I'm up anyways. And he played 3 hours of The Residents the other day. And I haven't listened to The Residents in years. And, I loved what and being in that, like you almost said, dream state, lucid dream state, half awake, it was completely mind blowing, because that third Reich and Roll album is just like the rhythms in that. And, it's funny because it was like Niagara once said, about Destroy a Monster. She goes, "We're worse than The Residents." And I always say The Residents were bad elevator music. But I can't figure out where these two guys from Louisiana, what happened to their brains to create this, because they're doing, Land of the Thousand Dances and, all these 60s pop songs AM radio, and the rhythms, it's almost like it's hard to listen to it, but if you're in the right mood, like I was, but the rhythms, sometimes it sounds like Keith Jarrett playing piano or some just amazing jazz piano in the midst of kind of throwing this Bo Diddley beat in the, so
the Residents are the most peculiar, one of the most, very peculiar. They're, I don't know if they were musicians at all. I don't know. I don't care.
Oh, yeah, they're musicians. They know what they're doing.
I don't know much about, they always seem to be so secretive about everything they do. So I don't really know much about them. I've seen them almost 4 times.
Yeah.
Last year they were in Detroit, and it was the situation was very disappointing. I had to walk out. But I saw them in 82, 92, and like 2002, basically.
Yeah.
And so I saw them in the early period when they had the eyeballs,
Yeah.
And the early stuff is just, like otherworldly.
It's otherworldly. Yeah. And it's like Devo made it, and the Residents made it because they had films in the Ann Arbor Film Festival. And in the new Devo doc admits it. we
Yeah.
broke because of Ann Arbor. So,
Oh,
but
really?
the other thing, Ben, that my friend says is the 3 T's of music: taste, technique, and theory. So technique, you've learned how to play guitar and sax. Theory, you know the structures. How does one acquire taste?
Well, taste is just what you like, what you respond to.
But how do you acquire it? Because you
You
and
just
your brothers.
it's acquired by your surroundings and by your DNA, I think.
Yeah,
It's a combination of like anything in your life. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I think
But
so.
you don't say it's more nurture or more nature. You're not saying it's more your gut or more what you're exposed to.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I don't know. To be safe, I'd say 50-50. But like, when I was 10, the British invasion came out, as you know, and that hit me like a train wreck.
Yeah,
I was blown away
yeah,
long before I was having sex. I was 10, and it was just a mind changer. And I didn't know I was going to be a musician, but I knew that that's all I thought about.
yeah,
Um, and so that's exposure, being there at the right time
yeah.
at the right place. And I was in Ann Arbor. It was a liberal town, a liberal oasis in Michigan. Shit. Um, yeah.
Great town to hear music. And then, even having Detroit, I remember missing this concert in my whole life. I go, why did you miss that? Beefheart opened for the Kinks at
I saw
Copa.
that. I saw that show. I didn't like the Kings. They were just drunk as ever. But
Were they?
well,
Wow.
they always were, as I understand. Yeah, real
I
strange.
didn't know that.
Oh God, it was terrible. Yeah, but Beefheart was amazing. Yeah, yeah. It was funny because he read off pieces of paper. All the lyrics were on pieces of paper, and then he'd throw the piece of paper, go to the next song, read it off his paper.
Yeah.
Yeah, unique.
Well, back to that word taste, and I like that you brought up the word gut and intuition earlier. McLuhan said 2 things here, and we could talk about them both. He said, song is slowed down speech. The reason cultures have different musical taste is ultimately connected to language difference. So, any comment on either of those thoughts? Song is slowed down speech. The reason cultures have different musical taste is ultimately connected to language difference.
Yeah, I would agree with both of those. It's interesting to say song is slow down speech, is sort of slow down thinking too. I mean, slow down experience, is slow down. I could say I love you to someone.
Yeah.
They would be saying I love you, but you put it into a song, and okay, I guess it lasts what 3 minutes or something. Saying
3 minutes.
It's an expression that goes on beyond the statement. Yeah, definitely.
That's funny because my friend who runs a bookstore, if you come to Venice, I'll take you there. It's called Angel City Bookstore. I every time I go in there, I think I'm in heaven because he's playing vinyl like Coltrane, and he's got the best organized bookstore in the world. And he said, oh yeah, do you know the Beatles song I Want to Hold Your Hand is about having sex? And I was like, what? And I know he's pulling my leg sometimes, but I wonder, have you ever heard that I want to hold your hand is I want to have sex with you?
Well, I suppose you can extrapolate anything.
Right, but have you the question is, have you ever heard that? Because
No,
I asked my wife, she goes, that's not what it's about.
no. I think it's pretty much frivolous teeny bopper shit,
Yeah. But then the thing about reason cultures have different musical taste is ultimately connected to language difference is also interesting because when the Brazil music came out, and swept America, we didn't necessarily even had to have it translated. We were just like, oh, it's romantic. And then the big one was the tuba throat singers. They played Johnny Carson. They played the Rose Bowl parade, and then they were jamming with Frank in his basement, and we saw these tuba throat singers, and we found out they sing about three things: their boots, snow, and the horses. But to us, it sounded like transcendental, like muddy howlin' wolf music.
Yeah, well, you made a point a few seconds earlier that basically illustrates that music is universal. You don't have to know the language. So in a sense, it doesn't matter about language.
Yeah.
You get it. If you get it because of what it is. I think that's important to say. Yeah.
Well, that's Stravinsky had this lecture that music means nothing. And it's like, well, I get what he's saying in a way, but like when we read a poem, or like, they asked Robert Frost, could you explain this poem? And he goes, you mean you want me to say it worse? And I mean, that's like, okay, here's one. Tell me an instrumental that makes you laugh.
Is this a question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because how could an instrumental make someone laugh? Isn't laughter come from words?
Yeah, words. Yeah, right.
Kinda. I know you can laugh. I mean, we can laugh at a pratfall. There's no words in a pratfall.
Yeah.
But I mean, tell me an instrumental song, a title that makes you laugh.
No, smile, but not laugh.
Oh yeah. Well, tell me one. What's the title?
That would smile?
Tell me one song that makes you smile. That's an instrumental.
Ventures.
Oh, Ventures. Okay. Yeah. Well, what's more fundamental, language or music?
What do you mean by fundamental?
Dude, you win. That's what this series is all about, inventing new questions.
I got plenty of those.
That's well, there's two great ones. John Cage goes, that's a very good question. I wouldn't want to ruin it with an answer.
Yeah.
But they ask the Irish, you answer questions with questions. And they go, we do, eh? So you've grown up, besides being a musician, you're a performer. You're performing music in front of an audience. And this is Ruth Draper. The key is to bring the audience up onto the stage and into the scene with you. It is they who must give you even more than you give them in the way of imagination and creative power. How do you do that? It sounds good, but how do you do that?
That's a good one. I mean, it's important to help, especially in music that's not automatically, oh yeah, I know that song.
Yeah.
You need to help in stuff. Most of the stuff I do, I especially the multiphonic guitar. Although many people now understand that kind of music, it's almost like a dime a dozen musicians like me everywhere. The noise genre is exploded over the last 30 years, But it's important to help the audience become a part of what I'm doing somehow, so they feel more comfortable with it, especially if they don't know it. They've never heard anything like that before. And often that is the case. And I used to never give that a thought. I just go up and do my thing and hope that they dig it. But now I'm, as the years go by, I try to find ways to interest them, so they automatically say, oh, what's up? What's up? You look at my instrument, and that's an automatic what's up, because it's weird. It's on a keyboard stand. I'm not playing it like like a regular guitar. I'm playing it with different, like, metal and springs and bows and whatever, my fingers, whatever. So there's certain things that I do that are so unusual. People will say, oh, what is he doing? So there's kind of an interest there. But no, I mean, I've done stuff like a visual projection, for example, to help people, because human beings connect visually very fast, much more than any other sense, I think.
Yeah.
Like whatever. I think, but then you have to be careful if you're using visuals. Is it really pertaining to what I'm doing? You know, I've done some performances where the visuals didn't pertain to what I was doing enough to legitimize what the projection, and that's a mistake. So um, I have to be. Yeah, that's a good. That'll give me
Well,
some thought.
I want to send you my latest 3-minute song because it's an instrumental and we made an experimental film with it. And some people don't want to see it's a strobe effect film. So I put a warning, but
Yeah.
I think when you watch it with the film, it's a total different experience. Because,
Yeah.
it's like I told my friend yesterday, he never heard of Carl Stalling. I says, have you ever watched a Bugs Bunny cartoon with your eyes shut? It's like, no one's ever done that. And if you do, you will hear Carl Stalling. If you watch a Bugs Bunny cartoon, you don't hear Carl Stalling. I mean, literally, you hear him, but metaphorically, you're in this realm of Bugs Bunny. And so what is the most dominant sense? Because neuroscientists say visual is the most dominant sense. Would you agree?
Again, depends what you mean by dominant sense, but I know what you're trying to get after. The reason I say visual is the quickest is because there's kind of no interpretation. Like language, you have to understand the language. Music, you have to understand a certain element of the language of that. Not that visuals have no language, but like a lot of things like stop signs or elevator signs or different signs that you see in a city, that they can just be icons or online. Sometimes you'll just see like a YouTube thing.
Yeah.
Just YouTube, and your mind goes YouTube. It's an immediate. It's very fast.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you said this. The noise genre has exploded, because I remember when I was interviewing Mike Kelly way back, and it said, he says, I'm a noise musician. So I looked it up in Wikipedia, and it was like, that's a described genre. And I loved it because it said Jimi Hendrix was listed as a noise musician. I was like, that's fucking great, because he was playing pop rock in a lot of ways, but in the midst of it, he was a noise musician. We're like, holy shit, he turned us on. But you said it all in a way like, are you happy that the noise genre has exploded, or you're not? Like, what's your feelings on that? Is it good that it's exploded?
Well, first of all, I want to say that Hendrix is a big inspiration, and period. But also for what I do with the guitar that I've been talking about, you can hear him in some stuff that I do. I have a big speed tailpiece, and the strings are tuned low, so you go, So obviously that's Hendrix. It's amazing. And you're right. He was doing pop songs, but he was way out there. Oh my God, a genius. Yeah. So back to the actual question.
Is the noise genre exploding? Yeah. Are you happy about it, or you're sad about it?
Yes and no. When I was touring from New York to Michigan when I moved 10 years ago. So, instead of just driving to Michigan, I decided to, do 7 performances or whatever. And it hit me, I started to feel like, being a noise musician is like being a bar band. They're everywhere. It's a dime a dozen. Everybody's doing it. And I said, fuck, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm tired of it. And I stopped, I did periodic performances, but I kind of stopped it for a while and worked on other genres that I've done before, like art rock or whatever. And I have a jazz quartet I started last year. And exploring more straight ahead techniques, even though it's not really straight ahead jazz. But for me, it was challenging and interesting to work on more traditional techniques.
But are you playing covers or
Oh
originals?
no, it's all originals.
All originals. So is it called post bop or what?
Yeah. Post bop would be a good one. Yeah.
So yeah, that's great. I'm just a noise musician bar band. That's like, what genre are you? Noise musician bar band. Well, this is another thing about audience. Leonard Cohen, the only way you can sell a concert is if you put yourself at risk. And if you don't do that, people know. What role does risk play in your creative process?
It's important, and the older I get, and the more I do what I do, the more I realize I have to continue taking risks to keep it alive.
Yeah,
and to see what I can do with it. Push the boundaries. I can't be satisfied with what I did last year because it sounded good to me. I need to keep. That's what artists do. They keep working to explore.
Yeah.
Well, like for me, a risk is doing working with vocals, because I mean that's actually just an example. I'm sorry, that's not a super example, but it's an example. Instead of just doing soundscapes, for example, integrating voice, which I'm starting to do. I'm doing a tour in April from Michigan to the East Coast and back, and there'll be a couple of performances where I'm using this multiphonic guitar, but I'm also doing some drum tracks, and I'm singing. They're actual, what I call pop songs, but they're bizarre,
Yeah.
And I'm excited to do that, but it's been a risk,
Well, so what does courage mean to you now?
Same thing, taking a risk. Yeah, the courage to take a risk. Yeah.
Well, then Viola Spolin, really interesting woman in Chicago. She was a social worker who did role-playing exercises and kind of invented comedy improv and spawned Second City, The Groundlings, and Saturday Night Live. And she has this amazing line: if the audience cannot see your struggle to achieve something, they cannot root for you to achieve it. What role does struggle play in your creative process?
Just trying to find that perfect noise, that perfect. I'm still talking about the guitar genre, because I do different things,
Yeah.
I had that post bop quartet, plus I have like a large chamber orchestra that does annual performance of Terry Riley's in C. Talking about Terry Riley.
Nice.
And we do that every year in Detroit. And so I've been inspired to work on some new compositions with that band besides the Terry Riley. But going back to your question, which I've already forgotten.
What role does struggle play in your career?
Well, I think we were talking about how the audience has to see that struggle, right? Yeah. I mean, you can tell if you're on stage and you're just going through the motions, that energy is, people pick up on that no matter what, whether they like it or not or whatever. Human beings are perceptive. So if you're really, if I'm really reaching for something and really trying, people pick up on it. Yeah, I guess that's all I'm saying.
This is Frank Zappa in the LA Free Press in '69. And he mentioned Pauline Oliveros' work with sound above the audible and below, creating a mass. And Frank said, it's not that it created a mass, it created something audible. It produced a sum indifference tone, which happened to be located within the audible frequency range. By combining something so high you couldn't hear it and something so low you couldn't hear it, it yields something in the middle you could hear. Whether or not you liked what you heard in the middle is another question. The concept is brilliant.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on this some indifference tone,
Mm-hmm.
Located within the audible frequency range?
Well, I guess we're kind of talking about subliminal experience of what's happening live on stage. And I think it really is live experience where you can pick up on that. You're not going to pick up on that on a recording, I don't think. I think you kind of need to be there real time. Or maybe I'm just saying that because I think live performance is becoming a dead phenomenon, with all the MP3s and people sitting at home watching YouTubes instead of going out and listening to live performance. It's such a difference when you're right there in the room with the artist on stage. You will pick up what you're talking about,
Exactly. That's Tom Waits nailed it. He said, the best music doesn't want to be recorded.
Yeah.
Well, that goes into archives. I wanted to ask you one question about archives because I know you and your brothers have an immense record of what you've done over these decades of creativity. And, the word archive is funny because it means keep safe from harm. And then 1600, it was a record or document preserved as evidence. And so, the Egyptians would save stuff in their coffin with them. But, you having studied like me, Eastern philosophy, Ram Dass said, be here now. The point of life is to live in the moment. Fuck the past. That has nothing to do with anything. We move forward. And so actually, of all people, Wyndham Lewis nailed it. He said, the artists live in the present and write a detailed history of the future. So yeah, I'm glad you laugh because it is funny. Just it sounds like gobbledygook. But
no, I like it. I like that.
But why do humans is this need or want to archive more innate or more invented? Is it in our DNA to archive? Because if the point of life is to live here now, I'm curious your thoughts.
Well, my initial thought is that it's DNA because our father and our mother were scientists, and they documented everything they did. They wrote things down, this species, that species, this location, that location, et cetera, et cetera. And I think me and Lawrence and Roger, as musicians, have documented stuff, what we've done ever since we were teenagers. Sprout and Layer, for example. And it's hugely important, I think, to us. We also do journaling, personal journaling. So there's documents as well. And no, not everybody does that. Not every musician does that. But then again, we produce a lot. I don't know if it's all good, but we produce a lot. So there's plenty to document. But I do think it's quite DNA-ish in our family.
It is. That's really good you said that, and I appreciate it. But, Ben, I'm curious, your plans, who holds on to all this stuff? Is it like when all three of you are dead, is there some plan? Does it go? Does some label hold the master tapes? The whole thing with studying archiving in this big research project I'm doing is don't destroy the masters. Everybody go, well, I put on a hard drive. And then they go, well, on a hard drive, you got to check the hard drive every year and change the hard drive every 10 years. And people go, I don't do that. And, do you have a plan? Is it going into some sort of university archive, your papers, your tapes, any plan for your own personal archives?
No plan at all. I'm assuming somebody will do something with it. But no, I don't know of any plan. But yeah, hard drives last about 2 years.
So, wow. See, now you're saying it different. But is it important that for your sense that it is preserved by something, like you leave it to your friends or your family, you guys do whatever they want. What if they just trash it? Does it mean anything to you once you're dead?
I'd like to think it means quite a bit for those who are interested in, what we do and music in general. Just because we've got so much of it. Yeah, I don't want it to be thrown away.
Yeah. Well, no, Joan Baez, man, they just made a film on her, and they said, "You got any archives?" And she goes, "Yeah, there's a storage space. I've never opened it in 50 years. My mom saved everything." So they hit they hit a gold mine. The documentarians had got it all. And then they said, well, what are you going to do with your archives? She goes, "I don't care. Throw it off, throw it away." And her assistant goes, "Oh no, we're negotiating with the Smithsonian right now."
I heard something really odd about some place in Hollywood that had.
Oh, it's not odd. It's universal. It all burned. All the masks.
Yeah. And they didn't tell anybody about it.
No, that was there's something very suspect about it.
Major issue.
Yeah, major. So here's Ben Ratliff, Ben. He is a music writer. He says, "I mean sound as it has long functioned among jazz players, as a mystical term of art, as in every musician finally needs a sound, a full and sensible embodiment of their artistic personality, such that it can be heard at best in a single note." So me and you could hear Jimmy, that's Jimmy, couple notes. Mm-hmm. We could hear Miles, oh, that's Miles. Ben said, he summarized it in 2 words. Miles is fragile and pointed. Coltrane is slightly undercooked and urgent. If a music writer was going to describe Ben Miller's sound in a couple words, what 2 words would you go, "Hey, he gets me"? You would feel honored,
I guess that's a good question, but it kind of, I don't really give a shit. I don't know. My first thought was, the musician's sound is their voice,
Yeah.
I was just thinking of a different term for the same thing. As far as, what my voice is, I don't know. It definitely has a individual voice, but shit, I never think about what people would say to that. No
worries. So George Manupelli started the Ann Arbor Film Festival over 60 years ago. He says, "Ignore yourself." Jonas Mekas says, "There is no self-expression." And Cecil Taylor says, "I'm just a vehicle and this stuff just comes through me." Is art making more self-expression or more you're a vehicle for whatever technologies, cultures, and environments are dominant?
I think it's 50-50. I think it's a good point. But I think it happens both ways. Self-expression is more, I guess, maybe more, it could be construed as ego,
Can art making be egoless?
Sure, I think so.
Good. Go ahead.
I'm just the less ego, probably the better.
Yeah. What was the motive of the cave artist? Your hunch or guess?
UFOs.
Very good. Do you listen to Coast Radio?
I have. not often, but yes.
They have rock guys on all the time. It was funny. They had a friend, the lead guitarist for Rush, not Rush, for Mahogany Rush. Frank Marine, he was a Hendrix one. Anyways, it's funny because it's mainly UFO and kooky stuff, but every once in a while they have these rock stars on talking, and it's funny because some of them are articulate thinkers.
Do they talk about UFOs?
Well, they usually talk about their music career and how the mob ran them. I'm obsessed with the mob running rock and roll. You know, the big one in Michigan, Crystal Blue Persuasion. Tommy James and the Shondells wrote a whole book how they were run by the mob.
Really?
Oh God, the mob's huge in rock and roll. You know,
I don't know.
In fact, Nancy Sinatra was asked, when did the mob enter the music business? And she said, honey, we invented the music business.
Well, I know the Sinatras were mob. Yeah.
What's more important, Ben, conviction or compromise?
Conviction. Compromise is good. It's important. It helps with serenity in my case. But it's important to have conviction, and especially delivery. You know, when you're when you're recording, playing, when you're producing your work, conviction is really important. Otherwise, it doesn't really come off the page.
In your accomplishments, how do you rate these three elements? Luck, skill, and ambition. What played the biggest role in the second role?
I don't think I believe in luck. Skill, you know, I have skills, but they're kind of all over the place. They're not a real, like, I'm not focused as a technically proficient kind of notion of skill. So I'm not sure how to view that. Ambition, I had a sense of ambition shortly after Destroy All Monsters, because I thought, oh my God, you know, you can do original music in bars and venues now because of the punk movement. That was a revolution.
Yeah.
But I quickly got despondent with the rock circuit by the early to mid 80s and just gave up on it, and had no sense of ambition. And then when I moved to New York, shortly after 9/11, my ambition kicked in, and I really worked my ass off trying to connect with, you know, network, you know, really do my damnedest to network with people and get out there and be in the real world to try and produce music and be, you know, expose what I do, which I'd never really done before. So there was a good thing about that, but there's also a kind of a negative thing about ambition that, you know, that I don't like. Yeah.
Yeah. T.S. Eliot said that poetry is outing your inner dialogue. What language is your inner dialogue in?
I don't know how to answer that question because I don't know quite how.
Like, what form is your inner consciousness in?
Yeah, I just don't know how to answer that other than intuition.
That's a great answer. Intuition is really good. Is perception reality?
Unfortunately, yes.
Lewis Carroll says, I believe as many as 6 impossible things before breakfast. Have you believed in any impossible things lately?
Say that again.
Have you believed in any?
Before that too.
Lewis Carroll says, I believed as many as 6 impossible things before breakfast.
Oh, okay. Okay. And now you're asking me
if you believed in any impossible things lately.
I really like that comment of Lewis Carroll, but I don't know how to respond to it. I don't think of impossible things per se. No.
You know, of all places, the New Yorker quoted Sun Ra. The impossible attracts me because I started wrong.
Is this what Sun Ra is saying?
This is Sun Ra's quote.
Yeah.
The impossible attracts me because everything possible has been done and the world didn't change.
Oh man, he's got some great stuff. You know,
leave it to Sun Ra, man. I used to see him in Ann Arbor, and he would project on his cape Super 8mm films of him in Egypt.
Yeah, yeah. That was another wonderful, yeah, amazing band person.
Tell me one major element of your creativeness, Ben, that's changed, and one major element that stayed the same in the many years you've been doing this.
Uh, I'm trying to find an answer that actually isn't boring.
Oh, don't worry about that.
No, but I mean, what hasn't changed is that I keep doing what I do.
Yeah.
Um, but what has changed dramatically or whatever, that kind of relates to my desire to not be concerned about what people think or the audience or
Yeah.
popularity. In other words, even though I was raised on the British invasion and loved rock music, there's so many other, the more artsy directions is really what my love is.
Yeah.
Perubu, beef art,
Yeah.
something besides love songs.
Yeah.
And so, the dismissal of that sort of ambitiousness to be a rock band or whatever,
Yeah.
allowed me to open up and do the avant-garde or art music, which is really my territory.
Yeah.
And I remember doing that in the 80s when I focused on my family instead of the rock circuit, and I was working with a sort of a band called GKW that was just doing really out there stuff. A lot of it was actually so out there that it was rather boring, but there were a few gems. And then, of course, this multiphonic guitar, it has no connection with songwriting and ordinary listening. I mean, I'm not the only one that's doing it. Obviously, lots of people have done it. And electronic music was huge in the 40s and 50s of last century. So it's not like I'm not trying to make a statement there. I'm just saying that for me, it was a way of allowing my creativity be without concerning myself with audience appeal.
Yeah. So, dude, everybody gets the documentary made about him. I mean, Morton Subotnick's got a doc out. Brian Eno's the doc.
Yeah, we saw that, yeah.
Yeah.
It's good.
Okay, so we got about 10 more minutes, Ben. This has really been fun. I appreciate it. Moshe Feldenkrais works with healing and movement. He says it's literally possible to identify a weakness and incorporate it to become a strength, rather than we're normally taught to overcome a weakness. Tell me a weakness you turned into a strength.
God, some of these questions are like, they're good, but it would take me a while to figure out how to, I have to think about it. But it's a good question.
Well, there's no rush. I mean, you could think, yeah.
I guess my weakness is that I don't have the mind, kind of mind that can really go with lots of what many musicians would think of as technique, knowing all your scales, this, that, and weaving in and out of chord progressions and, all this stuff. I mean, I know some technique that some musicians can't do, obviously, and I've made up my own techniques that musicians can't do. But in terms of standard techniques and mastering the instrument, I don't have the mindset to do that. And it's sometimes been like, oh shit, but because of that, I find other ways. I find that I can focus on my own creativity, my own path, and that makes up for it.
Yeah. No, I would say that was like what Zappa did as a guitarist. I mean, he was just like hearing, just like Jimmy Page and Jeff Beck, they were all just hearing Albert King and says, oh, I can do that. I'll just turn it up louder. And and Frank was, I saw Warren DeMartini from Rat used to come to the Zappa rehearsals, and his jaw was on the floor, and he was just a Clapton, Beck guy who played metal, and he's really good. But I would look at him and think his jaw's on the floor going, where in the fuck did he come up with these, this playing sounds like, Ravi Shankar meets, Igor Stravinsky. It's not playing the normal blues scale,
You're talking about Zappa.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really liked his, especially his earlier stuff. But I guess I do because I didn't follow.
But his guitar playing is what I mean. He's not like he's not the fastest. Like when John McLaughlin opened for Frank, it was like, oh yeah, Frank said get double bass drums on the drummers, and he made a comment about John. John's one of my favorite guitarists, and Frank is too. But John is technique wise. Right. Like maybe cleaner or better, but right. I like Frank turning his inabilities almost to fucking, play stuff that isn't as expected. So what McLuhan says is you turn a breakdown into a breakthrough or a rejection into a redirection. So that's what you sort of summarized well. So, what's the most significant difference between men and women, physical aside?
I've been trying to figure that out for a long time, buddy.
Let's leave it at that. We just got a few more. These are 5 Alan Watts questions off the top of your head in just a couple words. 1, who started it all?
Who started what?
Yeah, that's good. That's an answer. Okay. 2, are we going to make it?
That's debatable.
3, where do we put it?
Where do we put it? Pass.
4, who's cleaning it up?
God.
5, is it serious?
Yes, it's serious.
Very good. Okay, Ben, how do you find peace of mind?
I, for one, have found a connection with God, as I choose to call it, for many decades. I mean, in and out of that faith, but of belief. Say that again. What's the question?
How do you find peace of mind?
Yeah. So prayer often helps.
Yeah.
I think it always helps, but sometimes it's actually quite immediate. Other times it just seems like it's not happening, but you just never know because it's all in God's time, as they say. The serenity prayer is very helpful for me. Letting go, which is not easy. A lot of real simple things, those simple statements like one day at a time, those kind of things are, although yeah.
If you were walking down the street today and you met yourself as a 12-year-old, what would you say to your 12-year-old self?
Don't do drugs.
Which way should toilet paper come off the roll, over or under?
Over.
If a publisher was to release your autobiography off the top of your head, what would the title be? I'm glad you're laughing.
Whatever.
And they want to scent the glue and the binding of your autobiography. What smell?
Ginger.
If a statue was built in your honor, where would you want it displayed, and what would it be made of?
I don't know where it would be displayed, but I think dirt would be good.
Tell me something good you never had and you never want.
That it never would have, and never would want.
You've never had it. It's good, but you never want it.
I don't know.
If you were in a vat of vomit up to your neck and someone
A what?
If you were in a vat,
Vat.
a vat of vomit up to your neck and someone threw a bag of shit at your face, what would you do?
Where'd you come up with this?
I'll tell you where I come up with that, but if you want to give a plug or a try at it, I'll tell you, because the story
I would turn 90 degrees.
Okay, that's a good answer. No, you would love this, Ben. I met this Altacocker. You know what that is? An old Jewish guy who sits on the boardwalk in Venice, and he's had a good life. He used to hang out with Billie Holiday and Charles Mingus. Went to Amos Vogel's experimental film screenings in New York. And he taught me that question. It's sort of like a metaphor for life. We're all caught in a vat of vomit and people are throwing bags of shit at our face. Yeah. But the guy the other day, I love what he said. I says, you're in a vat of vomit and someone throws a bag of shit at you. So what would you say? And he goes, not again.
Yeah, that's a good one.
And another guy said, I wouldn't be in a situation like that. Okay, so what's the cultural shift you see developing today that inspires you?
I think it's not necessarily a political shift, but an awareness that the corporate system is broken and has been broken for a long time, and that we need to do something about it. It can't be fixed. It has to be changed.
Yeah.
And I feel that something's really happening, maybe for the first time in a long time, where there's enough people becoming aware that something's going to happen. I don't know what, but something's going to happen.
I like that attitude. What's a question that remains unresolved for you?
Meaning of life.
Yeah. How has playing music shaped your behavior?
It's made me feel good about myself. It's strengthened my sense of self.
That's good. Yeah. I'm going to be doing a lecture in Farmington in March about can art stop war?
Really? Send me you're talking about
I'll send you the information, but just two quick questions in that regard. Self, you said, know yourself. Both Krishnamurti and McLuhan said violence is the human search for identity. Do you think humans are innately violent? Is violence innate in humans or invented?
I don't think it's invented. I think it's pushed on people through Hollywood, through movies.
Yeah.
A lot of shit is pushed through movies, real negative stuff to control the masses. As far as violence being innate, perhaps, if you believe in evolution in the sense that we were cavemen with low IQ, and we were just surviving, and we had to kick each other's ass in order to get some food. You
Yeah.
know, okay, I can accept that. But no, violence does not have to be part of the picture. The violence is used for control, and it is purposely done by people who know what's going on for that reason. Other people do it just because of, terrible upbringing or whatever, as an emotional response. Maybe their parents beat them or something. But no, I think, and I think it, because of the influx of beings, spirits in the 60s, which is part of the whole 60s movement, as I understand, with people who have a higher intelligence and higher consciousness, that has been progressing. And there's lots of people now that I believe are leaning towards that higher consciousness scenario. That no, the violence isn't part of that. No.
Yeah, I agree. It's amazing. And you evoked two amazing things. There's a new book called Tripping Through Utopia. It's about how Margaret Mead and Gregory Bateson were taking LSD or studying psychedelics, as anthropologists. And he was watching a Hitler propaganda film showing how it is the power to corrupt, in movies. The history of movies is only 130 years, and the whole 130 years is propagating violence and war. And it's really horrible. But the flip is D.W. Griffith, who pretty much invented the feature film, said 100 years ago that in 2024, which is the year we're living in, cinema will stop warfare. It's like, good luck.
Yeah.
That's all we need is it to stop warfare. But two more and we're out of here, Ben. This has been amazing. This is Thornton Wilder in 1928. Art is confession. Art is the secret told. But art is not only the desire to tell one's secret, it's the desire to tell it and hide it at the same time. You've laid your cards on the table for over 90 minutes. I'm not insinuating you haven't already answered this. What's it really all about for you?
In terms of being a musician?
Again, you put in the context you want. Yeah. If you could put in that context, fine. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, because I'm a musician, that's what I do. That's what I I think my purpose is to turn people on to the ideas I have musically and artistically. And I think I feel that it's important to try to stimulate people, to turn them on, to think differently. I thought I had an answer to that, but I think that's about as far as I'm going with it.
Well, that's good. To stimulate and turn people on is amazing. This is the last question. What gives you the most optimism?
When I'm with people that care, when I sense the reality of what's the word? Begins with a C. Compassion.
Yes. Beautiful. Because the first question, Ben, I asked is, what's the best thing for a human being? Wilhelm Reich said the best thing for a human being is another human being. Mm-hmm. And the last question is what they asked Groucho Marx at the end of his life. What gives you the most optimism? And he said, other people. So it's sure been fun spending this time with another person, especially because it was you, Ben. Thank you so much for your time and energy, and thank you for your music.
Well, thank you, Jerry, for your time. I really appreciate it.
Even though I'm going to hit the end broadcast button, I hope this never ends and we can keep talking forever and ever.
That sounds wonderful. Thank you, Jerry.
All right. Thanks, man.